Hello and welcome back to my channel. You've probably noticed that I haven't made any update videos on my project since the end of December. So what is up with that? As I've mentioned a couple times in one or two of my lives, I usually spend the winter months working on stuff for a little event called the Super Bowl. Well, this year wasn't any different. From December to February, I was all kinds of busy making sidewalk ramps, ADA handrails, and lighting brackets. Unfortunately, when it was time to ship my stuff, we started getting all kinds of crazy weather. At one time during the build, we had a little over 9 inches of snow on the ground. And in order to prevent us from needing to deal with an Oreo on a black table syndrome when we set anything down in the snow, we decided to hold the trucks off in transit and more closely time their drop schedules. That way, we could unload a truck one day and install everything that we unloaded from that truck the next. We ended up running that way for a couple days until the snow removal equipment arrived from somewhere Ohio. It was an okay workaround until one truck missed the deadline and came in the wrong order. That left us burning days that we really didn't have, waiting for that one missing piece. Once the snow got handled and the trucks were back on schedule, the rest of the build went off without a hitch. That was, of course, right up until Donald Trump decided to be the first sitting president ever to attend the Super Bowl. It was an absolute logistics nightmare, but we got everything handled and no kittens died. Unfortunately, just as soon as I finished my part of the build, I got sick. Like super sick. Like, oh my gosh, is this going to be the thing that takes me out? I spent a little over a month going from viral pneumonia to bronchitis to double bacterial pneumonia, which is kind of a big deal for where I am transplant and cancer-wise. Needless to say, I ended up missing a couple cycles of chemo. But in the end, I got better. Thankfully, everyone that I take care of in the valley is used to my winter schedule and had booked accordingly. You've probably picked up that YouTube only makes a very small part of what I do for work. In the background, I run a machine shop, do small batch production, and one-off custom prototype work. I have a couple of clients that spend early summer in Alaska mining for gold. And this year, with the price of gold hovering at $3,300 an ounce, along with the gold to silver ratio regularly being at or above 100 to 1, they are all kinds of excited to have a bunch of new gear built for the season. So I spent most of the next month building sloughs, troughs, trommel parts, and fuel storage tanks, all bound for the wild tundra of Nome, Alaska. As I was finishing up that work, I decided to start remodeling the area adjacent to where the studio is in the shop. I'm setting up an area 20 foot by 16 foot and turning it into a clean room for the lasers and 3D printers. My plan is to move my CO2 machine out of my garage at home and set it up here. But if that's going to happen, it needs to be in an area that is separated from all the grit and dust that comes from the plasma machine, along with everything that comes from welding and grinding. See, the main shop generates a pile of metal dust, and lasers really prefer to live in a much cleaner environment. As for the partial hand project, a lot has happened since my last video. In early December, I placed a pretty big order with PCBWay for a ton of parts. When I was awarded the fellowship grant from OSV, my plan was to buy all the parts required to build the first 4 hands, and then when it was time to build the second batch, I would order those parts and so on. The reason for this was that if it became necessary for me to make any design changes, I could be super dynamic with the process and not wind up with a bunch of parts that I wouldn't be able to use because I ended up going a different direction with some portion of the project. And that plan was super solid until all the talk of tariffs started to happen. I'm already taking a pretty good size hit with how far I'm going to be able to go with the OSV money because of taxes. But now with the new tariffs coming into the picture, I'm going to again need to adjust the number of devices that I'll be able to build in this market study. The new plan is to order all the parts that I'm sure aren't going to change, and just enough of the other parts for the set of devices that I'm building right now. I feel pretty comfortable ordering all the parts for the fingers, especially since the design for the fingers hasn't really changed in the last 4 builds. That is, aside from changing the lower mounting rail stop of the metacarpal base from a keter to a cylinder, and changing the intersect point of the chain when the finger's in the closed position. I'm happy to say that for the most part, I think the fingers are in their final iteration. So I added the parts to build 12 sets of fingers to my PCBWay shopping cart and started to figure out exactly what I was going to do about the winder assemblies. Unfortunately, I can't do the same thing with the winder assemblies that I did with the fingers. The frame and core parts are either left or right, and either 3 or 4 finger builds. And really, I'm still quite a ways off from being able to consider the design of the Gaffney and winder assemblies final. For the first batch of devices and what I'm putting together for both Chris and Brandon, we've decided to keep the splay motion and drop the grip pattern selection. The current design with the cardioid latch just isn't robust enough for me to feel comfortable having other people rely on it for their daily device, especially for a feature that, while cool, I just didn't find that I used all that often. Maybe I'll reintroduce the grip pattern selection in the second or third batch devices, but for right now, it's not on my radar. But one cool thing about my design is it is super modular. And if I wind up getting the GPS to where I'm comfortable putting my name on it, the end user should be able to swap in a new Gaffney and locking fork and add it as a feature in a later time if they feel that it would be beneficial to their daily routine. So I ended up ordering 5 left and 5 right of the 4-finger setups, along with 2 each of the 3-finger setups. The total for the fingers and the winders came to a little over $5 grand in part and about $300 in shipping. The surprise for me came with the notice that I received from DHL on behalf of U.S. Customs. They were requesting an additional $1,800 in import tariffs and duties for me to actually receive the parts. That seemed a little steep, so I did some research, only to find that in September of 24, a new tariff was put in place raising the import tax on aluminum components from China to the U.S. from 12 to 32%. Well, that sucked, but big picture, had I not ordered the parts in December, but waited to order them until right now, with the new 145% tariff on aluminum manufactured goods, I'd be looking at a $7,250 tax, making the winders and the fingers cost $13,000 instead of the $7,000 that they did. Just remember that even though tariffs feel like another tax when you're paying them, the White House assures you that they aren't. Of course, fingers and winders don't make up a complete device. I still have to come up with the splay linkage, drivers, a Gaffney plate of some sort, both sides of the gimbals, and all the miscellaneous parts. The buckles, rollers, bearings, chain segments, and all the little parts that you really don't think about. In total, there are about 290 parts that make up a mechanical partial hand like mine. Lately, I've come to be pretty critical on a couple of the design aspects of this device that I've been using for a little over a year. I really don't like how the drive lever of the splay is outside of the Gaffney plate. Also, after a little bit over a year of daily use in an environment such as mine, the splay has started to generate a little bit of mechanical slop. See, the distance between the index and middle fingers isn't the same as the ring and pinky at full splay. And neither of these things are a huge deal, but they bug me, so I think they need to get changed. I'm also working on a couple ideas to improve the pronation and supination. Currently, if my forearm is a little bit swollen, when I rotate the hand from pronated position to the supinated position, the forearm cuff doesn't always easily slide on my fleshy forearm. When that happens, the gimbal and forearm cuff can sometimes get a little bit bitey on the head of my ulna bone of my wrist. Right now, I'm experimenting with extending the forearm cuff to just shy of the elbow, basically mimicking how the hand naturally rotates. And it's still pretty early, and I'm not really sure if it's something that'll be part of the new builds, but we'll see. So that's about all that I've been working on lately, although I'd like to take a moment and thank everyone that has been stopping by on my YouTube lives. In case you've missed them, lately I've been batch processing the finger parts from PCBWay in the evening and putting them on live. And yes, I am aware that at times it does look like I'm filming the lives on a potato. And for that, I am sorry. Reliable, affordable internet at the shop is something I am desperately in need of. Someday, T-Mobile might actually install the new tower they've been promising me for years. To make up for that, here's a video of my cat doing cat stuff. Thanks for watching.